This is the Going Home with Tony show.
It is.
And they woke me up just to be here. And my name is Tony Shemeka. I am the host. Claudia is our lovely co-host and engineer who gives me all these social cues that I'm not very good at.
In life also.
Melody, can you write a book called Social Cue Receiving?
I don't know if I'm even up to that task, Tony. I think you're gonna have to go it alone.
I'll be the before character. But we do have Melanie Fletcher here today from Deliberate Receiving. And Claudia, do you have a few comments about Melody before we dive right into this?
I do. Melanie Fletcher is an expert in the law of attraction who doesn't believe that spirituality or personal development have to be so darn serious all the time. She helps people who are tired of not being happy to figure out what they truly want and why they haven't gotten it so far, and then teaches them exactly what they need to do to realize their dreams. Her blog, a humorous, no-holds-barred, no BS look at how the law of attraction works and how to actually apply it to real-life situations, appeals to an audience of intellectuals who don't take life too seriously and appreciate her direct and honest approach as well as her ability to generate rapid life-changing results. Melody is also the author of the fabulous book Deliberate Receiving, Finally the Universe Makes Some Freaking Sense. And of course you can read more about Melody on her website, www.deliberatereceiving.com.
Well, what a great introduction. Melody, in the interest of full disclosure, do you mind if I tell you what I think about you?
Sure, go ahead.
My interpretation, now we've never met in person, but we've talked several times on the air. My interpretation or my perception of you is you're the kind of person that's going to be walking down, the Ramblas in Barcelona, and you're going to be laughing out loud
That's kind of how I picture
by yourself because something reminded you of a joke or some funny thing that happened, and you kind of like know the punchline, and you walk around with this joke in your head, but you kind of, not that you just keep it to yourself, but you seem to be your own best audience.
Yeah, that does happen. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm walking down the street laughing like a maniac constantly or anything like that. But it does happen quite a bit that, I kind of do live in my own reality, and I do that quite deliberately and quite consciously, and so I do entertain myself quite a bit.
Are you an only child?
No, I have an older sister. She actually is my business manager and works with me in Deliberate Receiving, and has begun coaching as well.
But you are the youngest. So, you're younger.
I'm the youngest, yeah.
Okay.
And so, I love to observe life. I love to observe people, and kind of, look for the beauty and the awesomeness, and kind of also the funniness and everything. And so I don't really get bored easily, if I'm out and about and kind of have things to look at.
Well, this is going to segue into what I'd like to speak to this morning. And it's about the unknown and fear.
Okay.
And so let's kind of like pare the things down, past, present, and future. Do we ever worry about the past?
Well, obviously people worry about the past, but I don't think there's a lot of value in worrying about the past, because the thing that you have to remember is whether you're worrying about the past or worrying about the future, you're still doing it right now in this moment.
Right.
And so there really is no other moment except for now. So there really is, for all intents and purposes, no past and no future. There is only right now.
Well,
and so you're telling yourself a fictitious story about the past, and it's always a fictitious story because you have a very limited perspective of what happened. Anybody else that was in the room when that happened will tell a different story of what happened. So you're telling a fictitious story. It's an even more fictitious story if you're telling about the future. And what I tell my clients is, if you know that you're telling yourself a fictitious story, why don't you go ahead and tell yourself one that is fun and good. So if you're remembering the past or you're thinking about the future, which is it's two sides of the same coin for me, look for that which was fun or will be fun, rather which is exactly the opposite of what most people do, which is they look to the past and they tell the same story over and over and over again of something that happened that wasn't good, didn't make them feel good, and they're using that as an excuse to feel bad right now.
Yep.
So, all right, that's all easily said, but
Not remedied.
hard to take in and change one's life. My interpretation of past, present, and future is I don't think we worry about the past, but I think we have a tendency of possibly lamenting, what we could have done differently or if things would have gone my way. We also look at the past as I'm losing my train of thought here, the thing not to do in the future. So we use that kind of like
lessons learned.
like as a
Right.
But I'm not gonna marry that kind of girl again. So I'll marry a different kind of girl, and then I'll do that, and then later in the future. So at the end, we just keep on living backwards and forwards, but we never live in the present. And I agree that there's no question about it, that all we really have is the present, and everything that has happened, and everything that's going to happen is going to happen. And today is, tomorrow's future and yesterday's past and all that.
Right.
What happened when we were kids and we were going to go on vacation? We would be so excited. We would just count down the minutes, and we're going to be going in the car and we're going to drive to California and everything is going to be so cool. What happened when we became adults and we said, oh my gosh, what's the traffic going to be like? I hope it doesn't snow. And what are we going to do if we have a flat? And, if the baby acts up, I just don't know what I'm going to do. What happened? Where did we become so doomsday-ish?
Well, a lot of it is that we just decided to follow the models that we were given. So our parents worried, and so we became worriers. We, were trained very much we talked about this in the last podcast a bit. We were trained to look at the negative just in case, because we feel safer knowing all the possibilities of what could go wrong so that we can steal against them. And we have, this thing called life experience. But again, this ties so perfectly into the statements that I just made. It's a very selective experience. So we look at all the bad things that have happened to us and we try to protect ourselves from those happening again. And that just keeps our focus generally negative. Instead of looking, we could do the same thing and just go, oh, well, the last time I left the house, it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect it to be awesome again, and as a kid, you have less of that experience to draw from. Mm-hmm. So you haven't yet learned to be as negative. You haven't yet learned to focus on negative, because it is a learned behavior, absolutely.
So you said steal against. What is it? That's a cool expression. I don't know what that means.
Protect yourself.
Well, to protect yourself, to create a protective barrier against things that could come in. So if I am anticipating that something bad is going to happen, then I'm hopefully going to be aware of it before it comes, and then I can protect myself against it. But in that moment, you're already sort of focused on the negative. So I bet that the parking lot's going to be crap. But we never take it, because you can actually work with that kind of thing if you realize that you're having that kind of thought. But we never take it into the positive. So if somebody says, well, I bet the parking lot's going to be really full and we're not going to get a parking space, you can take that and then shift it and say, well, is that what I want? No, that's not what I want. Well, what do I want? Well, I want to have a parking space right up front. Oh, my gosh, well, that feels a lot better to me to think about having a parking space right up front. Mm-hmm. You see, it's that turning it around and saying, well, that's what I don't want, and you can use that to figure out what you do want instead, and then focus on that instead, because people don't realize how powerful their focus is.
Totally.
And I wanted to touch on, because you made a really good point, and I want to touch on this point and expand upon it a little bit. You said, we use the past to learn lessons, and we think we have to look at the past and say, well, last time this happened in this situation, and so I'm going to try to prevent that situation from happening again. I'm not going to marry that kind of woman again, or I'm not going to take that kind of job again, or I'm going to, try to logically think my way into a better situation. But the problem with that is that we sort of do it the wrong way. We discount why we made the decision that we did. And we often use that information to beat ourselves up and say, well, I was just stupid, and that's why I made that decision. I was just blind, and that's why I married a person that ultimately turned out to be, you know, a douchebag. But the thing is, we didn't know they were a douchebag when we married them or got into a relationship with them. We didn't know that the boss was a tyrant. We didn't logically know that. And could there have been signs that we can see in hindsight? Of course. But we didn't recognize them at the time, you know. So we made the best decision that we could at the time. We had a manifestation, and we can learn from that by looking at it, but not in the way that most people do, in terms of logically figuring out how do I protect myself against the situation, but rather, why did I make the choice that I did? So, for example, I might have gone out with a guy who turned out to be a douchebag. Well, in the very first date, he might have said something that kind of really rubbed me the wrong way. But I decided, in hindsight I can see, I decided to just gloss over that because, ooh, he's so cute. Or, ooh, has this and this on paper. You know, he has his own job and he doesn't live with his parents and I'm lonely and I just want to get out of the house. And so, you know what, he may have said this thing that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I'm just going to let it go. And, you know, and it just got kind of worse from there until it got so bad that I decided, crap, this guy's an actual douchebag. I can't do this anymore. But the signs were there. But you want to look at yourself not in terms of taking, you know, blaming yourself and saying, well, why was I so stupid? But saying, why was I willing to put up with that?
And would you?
Why did I just gloss over that? And why? And what do I want to do so that I will not be willing to do that in the future?
And would you then tie that in from the conversations we've had in the past? Would you then tie that into your law of attraction, so that that you made that decision, even if you had a couple of cues that you chose to ignore, it was a vibration that was the right one for that time for you. You needed to be with that person.
Absolutely, because the reason that the douchebag showed up in the way that he did, meaning that, you know, he had lots of good things, otherwise, you know, he's just a total a-hole right from the beginning, you're going to be like, well, bye, I'm not going to date you. Sure. He has to be good enough to have something that attracts you so that you'll date him so that he can get in. But the only reason that he came in is because you have a willingness to make that decision. You have a willingness to say, well, that bothers me, but that's not a big enough deal for me to honor myself and do anything about it. Let me go ahead and subject myself to this some more because that's not really important enough for me to do anything about. Yeah, that was kind of disrespectful, but not so disrespectful that I have to do anything about it. I'm willing to put up with some disrespect in my life, and I'm willing to put up with, and if you have that willingness, that will be mirrored back to you constantly. Yeah, and that's the only reason that comes in, is to get you, to challenge you to finally make that decision. Is like, no, I am not going to put up with that anymore, because law of attraction can be like your best friend. It can be a bouncer that stands at the door and filters out all the crap. But only if you have set that filter first and said, I am not willing to put up with this crap in my playground. You must be this kind to come play with me in my playground. You must be this nice. You must be this intelligent. You must be this fun for me. You must be this awesome. Yeah? And it's sort of creating that list of what you want in a job, in a person, in a relationship, in a whatever. But when most people create that list, they create a bare minimum list. This is what I'd be willing to put up with. So clients will say things to me such as, well, you know, I don't even really want much. As long as, we're just talking about relationships here as an example. I don't really want much, you know, as long as he's got a good job and if he's just kind to me. And I'm like, no, those are bare minimums. If he's not kind, he's out the door, like, period. You know, and if he doesn't have a job, are you kidding me? You're going to support some guy, you know. That's not your wish list. Those are the bare minimums that you'd be willing to put up with. Those are the absolute, you know, deal breakers. And I say the deal breakers have to be bigger than that, because whenever somebody says, I don't really want much, they're lying. Because and they're lying to themselves. Right. We all want a lot, and we should all want a lot. And the only reason that we ever say that is because we don't think that we can have it.
Or we don't want to sound greedy.
Right, because it's wrong to want.
I remember as a kid, once I was complaining to my mother, I said, how can we never, by the way, that thing about vacation, I wasn't speaking from personal experience because we never went on a vacation. But it's cool. I go on them now. I told my mom, I said, you know, how come Dad doesn't want to do any of this stuff? And she says, what do you want me to do, divorce him? He doesn't hit me.
Yeah.
And it was like so
Right.
profound
Right.
that was the baseline
Right.
for staying
that was
married.
okay.
He doesn't hit me. You know, I
Right.
said, okay, well, that's true. I take it all back. Everything's cool.
We're all happy.
He doesn't hit you.
What more do you want?
Yeah,
what more do you
more
want,
do
you
you
know?
not want? But that was, she was born in 1920, and, and there was never any domestic violence except on me. And the mindset was that accept and expect the bare minimum.
Yes.
And nothing else is going to, everything else will be beyond your expectation. You had said something earlier, and it really, because Claudia is I had a practice wife,
Right.
and then now I have a perfect wife.
Oh, yeah.
Aw.
And in the practice wife, she was and probably still is an artist. And I knew even then, while we were courting, that I wanted to be an artist. And I knew that I wasn't an artist, but the best way to be an artist once removed is to hang out with an artist. And once I hung out with the artist, then I took the blinders off and I realized the things that I wasn't seeing, and that became unacceptable. So we weren't going to be able to, she wasn't going to be able to play in my playground anymore. But what drew me to her, the attraction, was this kind of bohemian, carefree, let's go paint on the sidewalk for fun attitude, which was never who I was. And so, is that kind of like where you were going with that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, you're touching on a really good point there, which is, again, something that people can use to sort of let themselves off the hook about their past, because you wouldn't know now what you know now
Right.
without having had that
Right.
experience.
Absolutely.
So you thought, I want to be with an artist because that really draws me, that whole artistic energy. And then you had the
I wanted
experience
to be the
and
artist.
you realized more about yourself. You defined your, you created a finer definition, a more poignant definition of your desire. And that was, oh, wait a minute. I want to be an artist, and I don't want to be with necessarily this energy that she's projecting. And there are things about this that actually bother me, and there are other things that I want that I didn't even know that I wanted in this way until I met this woman. And that helps you define it. So often it's our experiences that teach us more about what we want, and we would not know that, For example, you may not know that you're not willing to put up with somebody that is, let's just say, boring, until you have a boring partner. Because up until then, you may have been dating men who were not boring, but were really quite negative. And from that point of view, boring sounds great.
Sure.
Oh, God.
Doesn't hit
At
me.
least he's, doesn't hit me, doesn't do anything bad, doesn't gamble all the money away. Boring would be nice. But then you're in a boring relationship, and you're like, but this isn't fun either. And that's when people get trapped, and they think, I'm not allowed to want more. I have mediocre.
I have to
I have
settle.
neutral.
Mhm.
It's not bad.
Right.
But, one of the big impassioned speeches I give a lot is that not bad is not even close to the same thing as good.
Right.
And certainly not awesome. So the analogy I use is, the absence of cat poop is not the same thing as presence of chocolate.
Right, exactly. And I think that society creates a lot of pressure. So if we'll just keep along the relationship track here. And with relationships, that I think the reason that people, men and women, settle is there's such a societal pressure to connect with somebody and to commit to somebody. Although I think it's getting less and less. I'm happy to observe that it doesn't seem to be as strong. But I think that's one of the reasons, or one of the drawing forces that creates this, he's better than nothing, or she's better than the
Don't wanna
last
be
one,
alone.
or I don't want to be alone, and I don't want to look funny. I don't want to. My friends are all in a relationship.
What happens if
and
I have
I'm
a
not.
medical emergency? Who's going to take care of me? Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe I want to have children. Shouldn't I be in a relationship? All of these, and those are all messages from, as you said, from our from when we grew up, certainly, but also from society, and that makes it really difficult. And society and our family tells us, don't be greedy. Don't expect too much. Aim high-ish.
No. Aim low. And don't be disappointed.
And anything else?
Right,
That's
right.
true.
Because the thing you have to remember, though, is that people can only ever give us their perspective.
Right.
And so if your parents, God bless them, but if your parents didn't have a very positive relationship, maybe not a horrifically negative one, but not an awesome one, then they're not going to generally be able to, mirror back to you the belief that an awesome relationship is possible, because there's a reason why they weren't in an awesome relationship.
Well, don't you think, though, that that's very subjective? Because what you, Claudia, and myself may call awesome, my mother might have said, in the end, I'm telling you, she outlived my dad probably by about 20 years, and she just, she was totally appreciative she always said he did the heavy lifting for her. So she never had to pick up anything more than 5 pounds. She was more of a thinker than a.
So she was happy.
So she was happy.
Yeah,
so,
and that's absolutely fine, and it absolutely is a completely and totally subjective thing. Other people can't tell you what to want, but other people also can't tell you what your limitations are, and that's why this requires a level of awareness for you to figure out what is it that you really want,
right.
Not just what you're willing to put up with. What is it that you really want, and not take on, well, this is what my parents had,
right.
And that would be good enough. When people use terms such as good enough, you have to be very careful. That's a very dangerous area. Not dangerous, dangerous,
Yeah.
but dangerous in terms of you may be missing out on some real awesomeness. Because what is awesome for you may be scary as hell to somebody else.
Well,
or may sound completely off the rails for somebody else. It is a very personal thing, but we are always evolving. So the relationships that sound good to us may sound out of this world to our parents, and certainly to our grandparents, who were still coming from a paradigm. You have to understand that we're moving into a paradigm now. I've talked about this before. I think two podcasts ago about the spectrum, where we're moving from the old world paradigm, where we're moving from being motivated by pain minimization, moving away from that which is pain, so making the less painful choice, to the paradigm of pleasure maximization, making the better feeling choice, the more awesome choice. And so, and in your mother's generation and my grandparents' generation, my great-grandparents' generation, they often, especially women, were moving away from, men who were abusive and super controlling and not very caring. And there was a lot of, danger for women. If they got left, they really didn't have anything.
They could die.
And it's not that long ago that women were considered property, and so we're moving out of that, but that is not the case anymore today. So we're moving out of that. So that's not even part of our decision-making process, although in some people's belief system it still is. So there really is this thought of, well, he doesn't beat me, what more do I want? And so for your mother, what was the better feeling choice is not anymore what will be the better feeling choice for you. And we want to always acknowledge that there's been an evolution.
And
Claudia doesn't beat me, by the way, just for everybody's.
I do not. So when you're dealing with your clients, it must be, and you can share this with us, it must be initially scary for them to break away from, so they probably come to you because they want to be happy. They want to figure out how to create happiness in their life. They're having a difficult time doing that, and that is what your strength is. You can work with them on showing and teaching them how to make these changes in their lives. However, they come to you, I would think, with a lifelong habit of whatever crap that they're dealing with, and it becomes like meatballs and potatoes, mashed potatoes. It becomes comfort for them, and you're going to help them change their life.
Get uncomfortable.
But they have to, do you find that they have to be uncomfortable first before they can reestablish a path toward happiness?
Do people change?
Well, generally,
Yeah, I guess that's the question.
Yeah, people do change. But here's the thing. When somebody seeks me out, it's usually because they're in a place of discomfort.
Okay.
And the discomfort has become so great that they're not willing to put up with it anymore. So they've already had that sort of,
Breakthrough.
they've had that kind of catalyst moment
Okay.
where they're saying, I don't know how to fix this, but this is not working for me anymore. I can't put up with this anymore. And so generally they've already had that moment of awareness, and then I'm just there to help them get the tools so that now they can move into the direction of what they actually want, which may mean often defining what it is that they actually want and owning that and giving themselves permission for that, and then taking a look at what's standing in the way and the old patterns of how they've always done things that they actually want to break out of. But it's the desire to break out of those patterns that they already bring to the table. If somebody doesn't have that desire and that awareness, I don't work with them because that wouldn't be fun for me.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
because I'm not in the habit of looking at people's lives and saying, hey, did you know your life is screwed up? I mean, there's no benefit in that. If somebody has to have that realization for themselves, because, again, it's a subjective thing, I don't like where I am, and I don't like where I'm going, and I want somebody to help me figure out where I actually want to go and how to get there.
Well, I guess,
and that's where I come in.
but I guess I understood that. I think that's what I would figure they would reach out to you in regards to. However, because it's a lifelong pattern that they want to get out of, do you find that there's a certain amount of comfort there because that is where they lived in, and that they want to change, and
It's
they'll
their comfortable, uncomfortable couch.
that they slip back, that they'll
they know where the bad cushions are, and they
Right.
got used to it.
Yes, I mean, absolutely, and people have to have a certain amount of comfort. I always say, you have to be comfortable with the discomfort.
Yeah.
You have to make peace with the discomfort, because a lot of what I teach, has to do with actually stepping into the negative emotion and not trying to run away from the negative emotion, not avoid it anymore, which makes me a little bit different from a lot of other law of attraction teachers that just talk about, feeling better, and I'm saying, well, that's great if you can do that, but if you can't, then go 180 degrees in the other direction and actually step into the negative emotion and make peace with the discomfort, which, because people are afraid that they're just going to stay there, but they actually move through it to the other side where the awesomeness lies. So you have to have a willingness to take a look at those patterns, and what coaching, can help them with is so that they don't then get mired in self-blame, the whole like, oh, how could it be so stupid to have done that again and again and again, which is where people often are when they come to me, and then we move them out of that, because that's not helpful when you're blaming yourself. No. I couldn't be so stupid, which is, why I already said you can help, you can use certain, perspectives to let yourself off the hook by saying, well, I did the best I could, and the decisions that I was I was choosing between bad and worse, and now I'm choosing between bad and good. So that's a different decision that I'm making now. I didn't even see that option before. Now that I see that option, of course I'm going to make a better feeling choice.
But do people see that, and do they do it?
Yeah, they do it. Of course they do it. Wow. Otherwise, this wouldn't be fun at all.
No, I understand.
And everybody moves at their own pace.
Do people change?
People do absolutely change. This is profoundly changing work. And that's the fun part about it, is because people start to change themselves and they start to change their energy, and it's so much faster than, and I'm not disparaging psychotherapy because everything has its place, but it is so much faster than psychotherapy because you're actually changing the energy underneath. So then your behavior, which is just a manifestation, automatically changes. And so making those choices is no longer something that you do out of willpower. I have to choose this better feeling thing. You do it automatically. And the way that the way that I, always put it is if somebody puts in front of you I'm just going to say a shit sandwich, and a McDonald's burger. Well, you're going to eat the McDonald's burger, of course, because you're not going to eat the shit sandwich. This is worse and not so worse, But then if somebody puts in front of you the finest chocolate known to man, do you really have to make that decision with willpower, or do you naturally just go for it? You see, but if that option wasn't visible to you before, you didn't even know chocolate was available, of course you went for the McDonald's.
Right.
Yeah? But then here's, or just, a 3 Michelin star meal somebody's created. When you see that, it isn't a hard choice to make.
So why do we take the path of least resistance, like water? Why do we always go for the low-hanging fruit?
Well, because we make the best feeling choice we have access to. So a lot of this work is opening up the perspective so that you can see those better feeling options that you didn't even know were there and that other people did their best to discourage you from looking for.
All right, so Melody, at what point is it not about the wife, it's not about the husband, it's not about the son, the daughter, mother, father, and it's just us in our own universe flying through this hermetically sealed bubble of water and rock called the earth, and that we're able to exist because, not everybody can or will rule out the people in their life to get out of their playground, that they do have to coexist in the world. What advice can you give our listeners that at the end of the day, you are in this by yourself and it's up to you to make it as good as possible?
Well, here's the thing. I work with people where they are. And for some people, the message that they're really just in a holographic room by themselves and nothing else really exists and it's all just a hologram
Correct.
is scary as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why?
they can't accept that,
Why is
and
it
it doesn't
scary?
bring them, because it defies too many of their beliefs in that moment.
All right, so
And
does that
so
mean, does it put more responsibility on them so they stop blaming?
Well, no, what it does is it shakes your identity too much.
Mm-hmm.
Your belief systems shape your identity. And this is what we talk about when people talk about something called ego death. Your ego doesn't actually die, but your mind thinks that your identity is being killed off. Mm-hmm. And because your mind, has a problem with death, it thinks that it's dying. And it will fight very hard against that. And so and there's no reason to do it that in such a sort of hardcore way, although some people really enjoy that. Yeah. And some of us are hardcore. But really, you have to understand that your identity comes from how you think the world works and how you fit into that world and how, you can function in this world. And if you defy that too much, it becomes very, very scary. And so I kind of lead people into it and take them as far as they want to go. Some people don't want to go that far down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. They just want to know how to have a pleasant life. And some people really want to get deep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people want to get deeply into it and fully get into there is no separation between me and anybody else, and we're all just one, and I can totally see myself in everything, and I actually created everything, and it's all beautiful, and it's all perfect, and I can look at all the darkness in the world, and it's all beautiful, and it's all perfect, and it's all my creation, and I am God. If you want to go to that level, fine. If you don't, fine. Yeah. You can go as far down this rabbit hole as you want, and there is no right or wrong in it. There's only what you want and how far you want to go.
I always say there's no right and there's no wrong. It just is.
It's just an is.
Yeah. And so I work with people where they are and the belief systems, because I like to work. We do profound and very quick work, but we do it as gently as we can and as gently as the person needs it to be, because there's no reason to create a psychotic break in somebody. Because if the example that I like to use is, and I think we talked about this a couple of months ago, of time not really existing. Time is an illusion. And time is, and a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. And so just to give a little bit of an example, everybody's had the experience of being so immersed in an activity that time sped up. Mm-hmm. They thought it was 20 minutes and it was actually 5 hours.
Right.
And we've all had the experience of thinking, oh my God, 5 hours has gone by, but it's only been 20 minutes, And so time really is quite fluid, and it is an illusion, but it's a really useful illusion.
It's a tool.
For things to be linear, And for example, I had an experience when I was in a San Pedro ceremony in Peru where I sort of left consciousness. I kind of blacked out and expanded to all that is, and expanded much further than my conscious mind could allow. So I kind of blacked out and then came back out of time sequence. So the things that happened to me first were the things that actually came after the things that happened to me next. And it was profoundly disorienting.
Wait.
I think I need a piece of paper.
I got lost in time there for a minute. So
right.
What you thought had happened hadn't happened yet?
Right. So I experienced a moment, let's say if I was to put a timeline on it, I would have experienced 3:15 and then experienced 3 o'clock.
Got it.
Wow.
And, and then experienced 3:45 and then experienced 2:30.
It's good if you're paid by the hour.
just jumped around like that. It was profoundly disorienting. And I was able to handle it for that particular moment that I have I have no idea how long this lasted because, again, time had no meaning in that moment. And it gave me a glimpse of what it is to be out of time. And yet I'm profoundly appreciative of the fact that normally my life is quite linear. I get up in the morning and time seems to pass, and then noon comes along, and then the sun goes down, and then it's evening. And it could be because I'm not ready to live my life out of time.
You know, every day... Do you know every day what day it is?
I forget a lot.
Does it matter?
No.
Why are we so hung up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? What does it make? The wind doesn't know.
Well, I mean, it's a useful tool because if you want to get together with somebody and you're not both in this conscious place where you can simply say, when the timing is right, we will both be inspired to be in the right place at the right time and we will meet, then it's really useful to say, let's meet on Monday at 2 o'clock.
It is. I can understand the arrangement thing, but in our head thing, we live in 60 second, 60 minute, 24 hour, 7 day, 30 day approximately, 365 day unless there's a leap year. We put so much emphasis on benchmarking time that are we a slave to this myth that we've created?
I think many people definitely are, but we absolutely don't have to be. I mean, I certainly used to be.
You wear a wristwatch?
No, I haven't worn a watch in years.
Okay. Because I really thought that was a big break for me, is to stop wearing a watch.
So
yeah, it definitely is. I mean, and I just want to finish this thought. You know, back in my corporate days, I mean, I was scheduled down to the last 15 minutes. I mean, if I had to pee, I was late for my next conference call. You know, and my day was so scheduled. So when I stepped out of that, I very much kind of got rid of everything. And I hadn't even been wearing a watch then. But you know, you have computers and cell phones, and
sure.
a watch is a single function device. You know, why would you carry that around? What a waste. But
I watch. Yeah.
You know, exactly. So for me, I enjoy not needing to know what time it is all the time, particularly when I'm away. When I'm at my computer, I know what time it is. I can check any time. But when I'm away, I like the timelessness of that and just letting myself drift and be relaxed about it. And I think that most people don't even know the luxury that is that timeless feeling unless maybe they're on vacation. And we can live our lives like that, where we simply sort of allow ourselves, maybe not 24 hours a day or 365 days a year. Like I said, there's some benefit to still, you know, noticing schedules and that sort of thing. But I think that there's a lot of benefit to deliberately creating times or even entire days where we let ourselves just float. And I have days where I work, but I don't have any coaching calls because my coaching calls are scheduled, obviously, where I just do whatever I'm inspired to do, and I don't care how long it's going to take me, and I don't check the time, and I eat when I'm hungry. I don't care if it's lunchtime or whatever, and I go to bed when I'm tired, and I don't really care what time of the day it is, and if I want to take a nap, I take a nap, and it's all very, very free-flowing like that, and I appreciate that so much, and I think that, you know, a lot of people could create more of that than they do because we do become so rigid about it, and we think that we have to be because otherwise everything will fall apart and we won't get anything done. And, you know, I talk to parents who are like, no, but I have to be structured with my children. They have to go to bed at a certain time every night. And yeah, maybe a little bit, but also maybe you're holding on to it just a little bit too much.
Right.
Maybe you're giving it a little bit too much emphasis.
Right.
Yeah, that it's so important because, you know, people are always, when you hear people talking about there's no time, and they're constantly under this stress, they're creating, and you can watch them create situations where they actually create the situation of no time.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
By squandering their time.
We had a number of house guests this weekend for our Thanksgiving and a couple weekends ago, and one of the guests said to me, they said, where are all your clocks? I need a clock, and I don't see any clocks anywhere. And I realized we really don't have any clocks, not too many. On the stove, there's one. But this person was concerned and said that they live by the clock, and they needed to know what time it was, and we have no clocks, and I prefer it that way. So, and
yeah, and there's actually an anxiety that comes
Yes.
up in people when they don't know what
Yes.
time it is, and at that point,
that was an anxious
if you
question, right?
yeah, if you become aware of it, you can start to ask yourself, what am I afraid of?
Right.
What am I afraid? You step into that discomfort. You allow yourself to actually feel it instead of running away from it and going, let me just find out what time it is so that I don't have to feel this feeling. You actually allow yourself to feel that feeling, and you say, okay, this is actually making me really uncomfortable to not know what time it is. What an arbitrary thing to feel uncomfortable about. But why am I feeling so uncomfortable? What am I actually afraid
Right.
is going to go wrong if I don't know what time it is?
Mm-hmm.
And you might figure out that it's a totally ridiculous fear, but you'll never become aware of it unless you're actually willing to feel that discomfort and question it.
But do you think, though, that the whole time hang up is that possibly next will be better, or what I'm supposed to be doing in the next time? Because we never look at the clock to see what time it was.
Yeah, and maybe it's because it has to do with that living in the future. I wonder if the people that are really obsessed with time are more of the future trippers, where they're thinking, you're right, I bet that's part of it.
Where do
they
I
think
got to
it's-
be, and how am I going to
Or is it going to be better? So we're not living in the moment. The next moment at 4:45.
Let's ask the expert.
Okay.
Melanie Fletcher.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely not living in the moment. Definitely living in the future. And it may be, I think for most people it isn't, a desperation thinking the next moment's going to be better. It's rather that something will go wrong and I won't get it all done.
Yeah.
And I have to fit it all in, and oh no, it's already 5 o'clock and I'm still meant to do this and this and this, and I should be doing that, and sort of it's a fear. It's a real fear, which is why, just like with your house guest, it's an anxiety that comes up around time. A lot of people have a tremendous amount of anxiety around time.
Well, I just had a major breakthrough with, believe it or not, television. We are getting rid of our television programming that they program what they want us to watch when they want us to watch it.
Yes.
And with this new programming, I think it's called Roku.
Streaming. Yes, Roku.
Roku, and it has all these different services.
The streaming media.
Basically, you can watch anything you want, anytime. And I just felt so, oh my God, now it's up to me to take control over what I want to watch when I want to watch it.
And if you want to watch it.
And if I want to watch, because, well, I always had the if because I could surf, but it was the what I want to watch when I want to watch it, because in the past, I could only watch what they wanted me to watch when they wanted me to watch it.
Right.
So it's really,
Right.
so you know what I find myself doing? Watching nothing. Because I haven't taken on the responsibility of decision and choice that I can watch anything I want when I want to watch it. So now it's so disconcerting that it's on me now that I'm not interested in watching it anymore. I mean, so what's up with that?
Yeah, but rather than be disconcerted about it, I think it's absolutely beautiful because, before you may have been watching things that you didn't even really want to watch just because you were afraid that you would miss out on them.
Right.
What if I want to watch it later, then I can't watch it later.
Oh, totally.
But now you can watch it anytime you want.
Perfect.
You may be discovering that you don't really want to watch most of that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, the only thing that I can watch in real time is CNN, and it's just the same regurgitated,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, so it's such a, it's a great conundrum, but it's also that I have to
It's
take
a
on
freedom.
responsibility.
It's also a freedom.
It's a freedom.
And but responsibility and freedom is scary.
So, if you were to predict the future, and let's say everybody really gets that Melanie Fletcher knows what she's talking about here and has all understood, they all understand the law of attraction, they understand deliberate receiving, they're on this track. Do you see that there will be this timelessness that will happen to us as humans if we go and if we evolve in that direction? Will we experience, in your opinion, will we experience what you experienced in Peru when you had that kind of out of time experience? Do you think that is actually what all humans are capable of? And if we live this life of making choices, of being happy, of creating timelessness for ourselves, is that going to be where we can be?
Well, I mean, to tell you the truth, I think that we're a long ways off from
time
not
does that
experiencing
take, Melanie
linear
Fletcher?
time. How much time? Because I think like I said, for me personally, there's great value in linear time, but I think that that we can definitely get to a point, and I have no idea when, as a humanity, I think that everybody can direct this for themselves and decide that that's what they want to move into and start moving in that direction. And I think as a planet, we are moving more and more into that direction, and you can see that as evidenced by the fact that people are starting to want to make choices in their programming, or when, even work schedules. A lot of people are starting to work, from home and working schedules that are their own and creating their own hours. That's happening more and more.
Well, we totally.
But I think that we will move towards a space where it is going to be all about trusting your inspiration and meeting up with people, not because you've made an appointment, but because it's just the right time, and then you just happen to meet. Right. You go to a cafe, and there's your friend at a cafe, and now you have a great conversation, and you musicians coming together, and suddenly there's a concert spontaneously, and people are drawn to it. And I think that, that's what I see happening more, rather than us moving into a space where time has no meaning, because I got to tell you, I experienced it, and I'm not sure how I would ever use that. I think that was a teaching moment for me, not necessarily a state that I want to live in, because I'm not sure how useful that would be to jump around in time, although, of course, we can use that when, we can place our focus on different points in time, and we can jump around that way, but I'm not sure how useful it would be to live life like that.
Well, speaking of time,
and maybe that's just my own limitation, because there may be people on this planet right now who very much can see that in a useful way.
Well, since we don't have watches, we run out of time. And this has been the Going Home with Tony show. We're Tony and Claudia, and this is Melanie Fletcher from Deliberate Receiving. If we could just start taking these lessons and putting them into real time, and there's one thing that we can't deny is that we've had this conversation. So I think the foundation of change starts with speak, and we've had this conversation. So Melody, we really want to thank you for your time, because we know it is valuable, and we just really are very deeply appreciative of you.
And we want to remind our listeners, because really, Tony and I, at the end of each episode that we are with you, Melody, we just talk about it for days and days and days. You are so inspirational and eye-opening. You just allow people to really think about other possibilities, and I really believe that that's what our listeners will gain value from.
And us.
And so I would highly suggest people go to Melody's website, which is www.deliberatereceiving.com. You can find her on Facebook.
When they have time.
When they should make time for that one. They should make time for that one. You can find her on Facebook as well. Her blog on her website is fascinating. You just never want to stop reading it, because you learn and you see more incidences. She'll have people that are asking questions, and she will answer these questions. You can go to her YouTube page and watch her videos where she answers clients' questions or readers' questions, and she's just fascinating. So www.deliberatereceiving.com, and Tony's right, we're really grateful for you, Melody.
You're a cool girl. Thanks, Melody.
And I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you so much. I love it. Love you too.
Hey, wait a minute, wait. You didn't say it back. You left it
I
up
did.
No, you just said, me too.
No, I said love you too.
I didn't hear. We're going to play the tape back.
Oh my gosh, Tony, needy much?
That was like
no
a
kidding.
900-pound matzo ball sitting out there.
And next time we get together, we're going to talk about being needy.
Yes, and love.
There we go. There we go. Love me.
All right. Thank you, Melody. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you guys. That was great.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.